Okay, today is 18 January 2013. I am interviewing John Norton Ray at his home in Bloomfield, Connecticut. The interviewer is Buckley W. Morgan II, working with Central Connecticut State University. Nobody else is present at this time. So, John, for the record, can you please state your full name, date of birth, and city and state in which you live?
John Norton Ray, born May 3rd, 1925, and I live in Bloomfield, Connecticut.
Okay, and in which war did you serve, John?
World War II,
Okay. And your branch of service?
the U.S. Marine Corps,
What was your highest rank?
corporal.
And in what general locations did you serve?
Well, I went to boot camp on the East Coast, Paris Island. Then I went to New River, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, where I trained as a field radio operator. Then I went out to the West Coast and wound up in Camp Pendleton. From the West Coast, I went to the Hawaiian Islands. And in the Hawaiian Islands, I was on all the islands in between the various operations. The first one was Saipan, then Tinian. Came back to the Hawaiian Islands. And then I left the Hawaiian Islands and went back to Iwo Jima. And from Iwo, I came back to the Hawaiian Islands, and then I left for the Army of Occupation in Japan, Sasebo.
And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
And where were you living at the time?
I was living in Darien. And I enlisted. I had to get permission of my mother to do it because I wasn't 18 years old. So I took an accelerated course from the high school. My senior year, actually my dad got my diploma. I wasn't there for graduation. But I went up to Springfield, Massachusetts to enlist. And I'd been playing hockey, and I had my right finger in a splint, and I had an eye patch over one eye because I've been, as I say, playing hockey. And the recruiting officer said, "Kid, you look like what we want, but come on back when you can read the eye chart and sign your name." So my mother heaved a sigh of relief because she had to give me permission. And then I went down to 99 Church Street, I believe it was, in New York City, and enlisted. And they took me.
Awesome. So, can you tell us why did you join and why did you pick the Marine Corps?
The Marine Corps? Well, it was funny. My dad was in the Army and during World War II, and I went to I had a friend of mine in school whose brother was on Guadalcanal, and he was a Marine. And he taught the Marine Corps, and about 7 of us applied for this accelerated program. And we finished up school ahead of time, and I picked the Marine Corps. And other than that, I don't know why I did. I'm glad I did.
So, can you tell me about your boot camp training experiences? Any particular stories or experiences while you're in basic training?
Yeah, I took the train from New York to Washington, D.C., and then we transferred the cars. This was done on the Mason-Dixon line, and we went on to Paris Island, South Carolina, and landed at a little town called Yamasee. And there they picked us up by bus and took us out to Paris Island. And I had my head shaved, my clothes were taken home and everything else, and I got my uniform. And then 2 weeks later, we got the rifle. And when I was in school, I'd been on the rifle team, and we used to have, when I was home, we had a 50-foot rifle range in the basement of our house, and I used to go down there after supper with my dad and practice shooting. And so I was familiar with a rifle. And so I wasn't looking forward too much with getting it because I knew you were going to have it carried at the trail, which gave you blisters. And I think we were, I can't remember, I think it was an 8 weeks course, 8 weeks or 10 weeks. I can't remember at this point. But 2 weeks of it was spent on the rifle range, being familiarized with everything from a machine gun to a BAR to pistol, I think we had, and with a rifle, which was the old M1 Garand. And then I believe we also had, and I can't remember whether it was here or whether it was later on out in California, they trained us in handling explosives with grenades and sticks of dynamite and this type of thing. And I know one time I picked up a stick of dynamite and planted it, and it didn't fuse. And the instructor said, I came back, and he said, "Get back up there and try and start the thing, light it again." So I did, and the things were going off on either side of me. And I said, this was not a funny experience. But anyway, to get back to boot camp, I remember the first time I wanted to go to the bathroom, and I said, permission. You had to ask the drill instructor, the DI. I had two of them. One was a PFC, Corporal Joseph, I guess he was, and the other was a Sergeant Fisher. And I had to knock on the door, Private Ray, request permission to go to I said, the foot. And this guy said, what? I said, the foot, sir. He said, you're in the Marine. You're not back home. It's called a head. So anyway, that was my first experience of being yelled at. And then we were in the parade ground one time. We had pith helmets because it was in the summer, and it was hotter than the devil. And my helmet blew off, pith helmet blew off. The drill instructor picked it up and jammed it back on my head, and he jammed it so hard that the blood was running down my face. But, you didn't dare do anything because you'd be in trouble. And then we got the normal shots in boot camp. And then afterward, we would go out and high port the locker boxes that we had to work the thing in. So from boot camp, I came home on a 10-day furlough. And then I went back to New River, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune. And I went through field operator radio school. And I was there, and I got a 62-hour pass after that. And I was doing code CW with Dits and Daws. And when I left there, I went to Camp Elliott, Linda Vista out in California. And I was there for a couple of days. And then I transferred over to Camp Pendleton. And then we went combat conditioning, which was racing up and down hills and all kinds of good stuff. And also learning how to fight with a knife and how to fight with a bayonet and that type of thing. And I was there, and then I received orders to board a ship in San Diego, and I did. And we were shipped out to the Hawaiian Islands. And that was the island of Oahu. And I was at Camp Catlin. And then I spent some time down in IE at Camp Smith, which was closer to Pearl. And then I left and boarded an LST and spent 21 lovely days on this boat with 9 of us in the Marine Corps and a small group of soldiers who were manning the 155s, the artillery pieces, and the naval crew. And we arrived in the island of Saipan on D+2. And we had we went in on a duck. I remember going off the bow of the boat in this duck, and I was the only one that was there other than the driver. And we started off and we went down, and I thought, oh, this is it, I'm going to drown at sea, because the water came just about up to where the windshield was, and then it popped up. And when I gave some notes, I said, first of all, I was in an Amtrak. It started out as an Amtrak and wound up as a duck when I finally went in. So we were at the wrong end of the island, was still held by the Japanese, and they were firing at us. And I remember the shells coming right up to the boat and going over the thing and then going beyond and then coming back in again. But they missed us. So anyway, we went into a place called Sharon Kanoa. And then I set up a radio net. I was with the Strategic Air Command, I think it was. I'm not sure. I'd have to refer to my notes. Anyway, I was in touch with Marine Corps pilots, telling them what was going on and where they had to go and this type of thing on a limited basis. And then I left there. And I remember getting into a foxhole one night, not being able to get out. Didn't bring the mosquito netting in because I was so tired, and getting stung by whatever it was, and I wound up with dengue fever. And that's the only time I didn't have malaria, thank the Lord. And we lived in a shack that was more or less had been a chicken coop, or I don't know what it was, but anyway, there were 6 of us that lived in this thing, sleeping on the ground, and it was funny. We had there were banana fields, banana groves, and one of the fellows went out and got a bunch of bananas that he hung up because they were green, and he covered it with cloth. Excuse me. And we were going to, he asked us to keep an eye on the thing, let him know when they were ripe. Well, by the time he got around to it, we told him they were ripe. There was only one left on the whole stalk. So anyway, we left there, and the operation was completed, and we went over to Tinian, which was the adjoining island, and we were there, and we were supposed to load ship right away, but we didn't. And every night we had a shelter half. We would put it up, and we would take it down during the day and pack it away. And it would rain every damn day. Well, finally we just gave up and we slept out in the rain. We loaded on board ship, and we left for there, and we went back to, I believe it was the island of Maui, and we were up in the hills beyond the volcano fields in Camp Tarawa, I think it was, and we used to go down to the docks and load ship and whatever, and they didn't know what to do with us for a while when we were there because they didn't know we were CP. They couldn't figure out what CP was, so we had a pretty nice time for a while till they finally caught on to us, and we got all kinds of guard duty and radio duty, radio watch duty. Yeah, one of the fellows that was there, I became friendly with. He was a fellow by the name of Bob Crosby, who was Bing Crosby's brother, and he was forming a band. So every night they would have a jam session, and we would go over there and listen to them. And at the end of the war, when we got back to San Diego and Camp Pendleton, we went into Los Angeles, and we looked him up, and there were 6 of us, and he took us out on the town, and we couldn't pay for a thing. And but then after we left that to go to Iwo, he kind of he had better things to do. He was entertaining the troops, so he didn't come along with us. We boarded ship and we went to Iwo, and I went in on, I don't know, 1100, I think it was, and I had a radio jeep, and we got stuck, and I got out of the jeep, and they proceeded to put a few holes in the exhaust pipe, which we had going up because we were landing in the surf. And alongside of us, there was a boat that suddenly got blown up. It was a landing craft. So we went up and grabbed our piece of sand, and that was it. And then later on, I was able to get a jeep, and I drove up. And that's where I learned about driving with a trailer. They hooked up a trailer in back of me full of ammo to take up to the line, which wasn't that far up. But anyway, I took it up, and it was a lot of noise up there and a lot of action, and they wanted me to put it someplace, and I just backed it up and snapped the back of the tongue of the trailer and got out of there in a hurry and dropped it. And then I went back, and then we set up headquarters. We were at the base of Mount Suribachi Hot Rocks. And I saw the flags go up, the first one go up, and then the second one go up. And I'd forgotten in a letter that I had written home that we had a piece of shrapnel that came through our shelter half one night. We had dug a foxhole and we had a shelter half put over the top of the thing, and it put a hole in it, and it leaked like a sieve. So I was there with my friend Jeff Steinman, and we left there after the island was secure, and we went back to the big island of Hawaii, and we were up in the hills, and again, and it was cold up there. Then I was out in the field. I was jamming radio signals that were coming in, just to get the guys practice. So I would go out in the field every day in my Jeep and do this type of thing. And then I got word in the field that the war was over, and we came back to camp. And then shortly thereafter, I left for the island of Kyushu in Japan in Sasebo, and I was there for a couple of days. And then they had 9 of us go up to a little town about 90 miles north called Fukuoka. We went up by Japanese train, and that was an experience. And we stayed there and established a net. And I made a couple of friends up there. And one was a very nice fellow. He was he was a school teacher, high school teacher. And after we got things secured, Fukuoka was a lot different. They were still Easter. Well, they were still wearing the Japanese kimonos and all this type of thing. And the thing that always got me is that the men would walk ahead and the women would be back there carrying the loads. And so then I left there and I drove back to Sasebo, and we were going through the towns and driving along one of my buddies was up on the front, and they were distracted with something. Anyway, they went over on the rice paddy, and I think I hit a cow on the way back, and that was pretty much it. And then we got back to the States and pulled into San Diego, and I was discharged. Let's see, I went into San Diego on the 24th of December, 1945. And I was there for a short period of time, and then I went back to Bainbridge, Maryland, where I was discharged. And then I went home, and that was it.
And you were a radio operator?
Yes, field radio operator.
So how did you stay in touch with family while you were...
By letters. I've got emails that I wrote back and forth to them, V-mail or whatever you call it. Not emails, V-mail. Mm-hmm. The small ones that were broken down. And my folks kept a lot of the letters that I had written. But they were all pretty much written after the war, because during the war you didn't have time to write. I mean, they knew when something happened, that I was in some place that I couldn't write. I would write them from the islands occasionally. But when we went into operations, of course, you couldn't write anywhere. So I know when my dad said that he figured out that I was on an operation because the letters would stop coming and they would receive word back on the radio or the newspapers that the Marines had gone into such and such an island. But
you said the train was quite an adventure.
The train, oh yeah.
Japanese train.
Yeah, it was a Japanese train, and they had, as I remember, there was somebody that was sitting there, because there were only 9 of us going up, and all the Japanese that were there, and they weren't very happy with us, a lot of them. And this one guy had a piece of fish that he opened up, and I looked at the thing, and oh my God, it was awful. I think I threw it out the window of the train, which created an uproar. And then, of course, the bathing facilities, or the toilet facilities, were a hole in the bottom of the train, and that was an experience. But when we went into Fukuoka, as I say, there were statues, a lot of Buddha statues and things like that around. And I remember one night we heard some hollering and yelling from one of the things, and we went up. We never found out what it was, but they were just trying to get us, upset us, I guess. I don't know. But as I say, we were kind of outnumbered, and they were collecting weapons all the time from stacking up the Japanese rifles that were there, and the samurai swords and whatever they had. But,
What was the food like during these?
well, yeah, the food we had were C rations and D bars, which are candy bars. And the C rations were, we got tired of those. And then they had what they called 10 and 1 rations, which to us was like a Christmas dinner. And I don't know who it was. Somebody organized about half a dozen of us or more. And we went down to where they were unloading supplies. And we managed to bluff our way onto getting some of these. We were a detail, that's what we said. And getting some of these 10 and 1 rations, and we brought them back on our shoulders. And we lived pretty good from that point on.
Well, John, did you feel pressure or stress during these
Yeah,
maneuvers?
yeah, yeah. We were tired. We would, when we were in Pendleton, we would run. We won one platoon against another and racing with full packs and this type of thing. And we were in good shape. You know, we had the bayonet training and all that type of thing. It was funny when we got to Hawaii, as I mentioned earlier. They didn't know exactly what we were, and they finally found out what we were, and they put us through an infiltration course. And we ran through the thing once, and we thought that was great. We turned around and ran through it again. Because we'd been in such, you know, we were training with calisthenics and running up and down the hills all the time, and they really toughened you up. And then we were experiencing crawling under live ammo and that type of thing, training it for the thing. They'd have barbed wire ahead of us, and you'd crawl under the thing, and they'd have live ammo going in front, over the top of us. And it was good. I remember I had an experience when they called me out to go after this. I don't remember what he was, a captain, a colonel, something like that. And I think his name was Colonel Biddle from some family, Blue Line, old Back Bay family, or whatever they call them in Philadelphia. Anyway, he said, "Kid, I want you to charge me with an open bayonet." I says, "What? You're kidding." He says, "No, come on." Well, I came after him. He took the thing. Next thing, I flipped the thing down, and I flipped me over his head. And he said, "That's the way you're supposed to do it." But I never could do it. But anyway, it was an experience.
What was your experience with the code talkers? Did you have anything?
Yeah, I had a lot to do with him. I had a good friend of mine, John Manuelito, who was a real nice fellow, and we went out on Liberty a couple of times, and of course they wouldn't let the Indians drink. They were concerned about that, so that we would go out and I'd get a beer and I'd slip him a beer outside. That was fine. But he was a real nice fellow. We were in the barracks in Sasebo, which was it was 2-story or 3-story, 2-story, I think. And the thing was propped up with poles on either side for rigidity's purpose. And I remember we used to, when the storm came up, we used to make bets on which window pane would break. And one night, one of the Indians got a little bit too much to drink, and he was running around with a knife in his hand, and finally somebody was able to take him down. But he was just, I don't know, being obnoxious. Oh, and then they put me in charge of, because I was a radio man, and they put me up on the roof because we had a storm coming in, a typhoon, I guess it was. And I was supposed to signal to all the ships via the blinker to get out of the harbor and get to a safer quarters, which I did, and with a couple of other fellows that were up there. And then they forgot to relieve us. And we stayed up there. We thought we were going to get blown off. It was like a water tower on top of the building. They finally realized we were up there, and they got us down. But it was it was not an experience I wanted to go through.
What did you think of the officers and your fellow servicemen?
I thought PFC Fisher was a rat. He was not a nice guy at all. But Sergeant, no, it was PFC Joseph. He was the fellow that nobody liked. He was just brutal in boot camp, unnecessarily so. But Sergeant Fisher was a real nice fellow. He was tough, but he was good. And actually, I saw him on, I think it was EWO, when I finally ran up against him. And I liked him very much. He came from Boston, red-headed Irishman. Nice guy. But the other officers were fine. I had a discussion one time with a Commodore, I think it was, on a ship when he looked in the gas tank that I had and said, "That looks like too much gas to me. Does that look like too much gas to you?" And I, dumb kid that I was, I said, "No, sir, it looks fine to me." He says, "All right, let it go." But that's when they brought it over the side of the ship and they would lower it into a Higgins boat or an LCV, I guess it was, landing craft vehicle. And then I went down the cargo nets and in the thing. And that's what I took ashore on Ewo. Didn't get very far. It got stuck in the sand as soon as it got out. But
So we know you kept a journal.
mm-hmm.
We'll talk about when your service ended. Do you remember that day, your last day?
I can't tell you, but it was it was in December. It was after Christmas, but I did make it to the States at Christmas time, and or the 24th we landed. So I was in Los Angeles, in L.A. Or rather Camp Pendleton for Christmas. And it was about a week or two later on that I was transferred by train again, across the country, back out to Bainbridge, Maryland, and I was there for a couple of days when I was discharged.
So after you discharged, did you go straight to work or did you go to school?
I went to school.
You went to college or university?
Yeah, I went to the University of, well, actually, it was the Junior College of Connecticut, which became the University of Bridgeport.
And how was that supported? Was that supported by GI Bill?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Yeah, I did. My friend that I was with most of the time was a kid from Brooklyn, Elias Jeffrey Steinman. And we were very close. We shared a foxhole and a chicken coop in Sharon Canoa in Saipan, and a foxhole in Ewo. And I thought so much of Jeff because we would go out and into the caves a little bit and wander around, and that I named my son, my second son, after him. And I lost track of him. I saw him after the war a couple times, and that was it. But the two fellows that I kept in contact for a little while was Danny Sheets and Jeff Steinman.
So you went on to school, and what was your career after that?
I was in banking. Yeah, I joined an outfit called the Investors Mortgage Company, which were placing loans through the Prudential Insurance Company in their real estate department. And I trained there, and then I got an offer from Sam Hawley, who later became president of the bank, to go to People's Bank, that they wanted me to join them because I was experienced in the field doing construction inspections and that type of thing. And I was a little concerned because my dad was an officer of the bank, and I asked Sam Hawley that if my father had anything to do with it. He said, "No," he says, "he doesn't know that I'm even going to talk with you." So then I went for the bank, and I was there for 38 years.
Did your military experiences influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
It was good training. It was excellent training. It trained me that if you got to the point when you didn't think you could go on, you could go on. That you'd be ready to give up, and they'd say, "Keep going," and kid, and you would, and then you find out that you had built-in energy that you didn't know about, and everything had to be in a certain place. And and fortunately for my wife, I think it's still pretty much that way. I'm pretty well organized, but everything is just so. But that's me.
So, have you joined any veterans organizations, or are you?
Yeah, I did. I joined the organizations because I was hoping that I could run across some of the fellows I was in the service with. It never worked, but I did. I joined the Marine Corps League in Stratford, which was near my hometown of Trumbull. And then I joined the Iwo Jima Survivors Association when some fellow got hold of me one time, and I did that. And I haven't been very active in those. Um, I went to a few of their meetings, but at this point, they don't buy green bananas, I guess you might say. We're all getting up there in age, so the meetings are not very often.
Well, John, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
You might come to mind.
No, I can't think of a thing.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your service, and thank you for taking the time to allow us to interview you.
Oh, you're welcome.